Well, what we have not seen much of in today's crime statistics release are references to cybercrime. This despite the fact that it's one of the biggest criminal threats facing businesses, potentially costing billions. Cybercrime affects businesses directly and indirectly, with direct losses including electronic cash theft, identity theft, information theft, also rendering systems unworkable, and the list goes on. Well, Craig Rosewarne is the MD of Wolfpack Information Risk. He joins us this afternoon. Craig, thanks very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Well, firstly, should cybercrime feature strongly in the crime stats? Why isn't it there?
I believe it should, because if you look at strategically in many other countries around the world, the cyber threat is now rated as a tier 1 threat, especially in developing countries like the US and the UK. It's seen as a major threat, right alongside terrorism and other major threats. And even global CEOs around the world are ranking it as a number 3 as a risk to face. The US recently brought out some stats to say that $100 billion is lost to cybercrime and cyber espionage in a 1-year period, or every consecutive year.
When we bring it to South Africa, what for you, as far as we can see, are the hardest hit areas for South Africa? And I believe it is difficult to gauge, isn't it?
Indeed, and really the cyber threat covers a broad spectrum of cybercrime, cyber espionage, cyber warfare, and oftentimes the crimes where technology is used to commit, it's very difficult to separate traditional crime from cybercrime. That's one of the challenges. And the other challenges we're seeing is the actual prosecution of those crimes. Courts don't really have the correct laws in place, effective laws to punish criminals with a severe enough sentence, to put them away for 10 or so years. So they're still using common law prosecutions such as theft, fraud. So the cyber stats are really intermingled and diluted with the traditional stats in commercial crime.
If we bring it back to the police stats, I see there's one element called commercial crimes, and I think it's up by 0.6%. I would imagine currently that's where cyber crimes fit into, so-called commercial crimes.
Yes, indeed. So typically the financially driven crimes fit into there. There are other crimes which are where no money is really lost, but IP, intellectual property is stolen, or damage to infrastructure occurs as a result of computer attacks. So that would be a separate component. But we are not keeping stats in our country. So we did a bit of a research report end of last year funded by the British government, and we ascertained that in a 1.5-year period within the financial, government and telecommunication sectors, we saw losses of in the region of 2.6 billion rand, which were very conservative.
When you try and measure what cybercrime costs businesses, particularly in South Africa, I was just reading a stat, as you mentioned, that last year 50% of businesses targeted by cybercrime were businesses that employed less than 2,500 people. It just gives you a sense that it's not just the multinationals, it's not just the big businesses, but people are losing money even on the lower levels.
Indeed. So the big guys are getting targeted, but the smaller guys typically have very little security in place. And right down to the average man in the street are also seriously being targeted. And that's my major concern, that there are no national awareness campaigns being rolled out. People are not aware of just how dangerous it actually is out there. And once again, we've been driven to push out an initiative, and we've managed to collate a number of threats and scams on a publicly available website, alertafrica.com, which once again has been sponsored by the British High Commission to try and drive some sort of awareness out there in South Africa and other African countries as well.
You speak about awareness. I mean, the first step is actually to get that acknowledgement from government and business that we are dealing with, one person called it a national crisis this week when it comes to cybercrime.
Well, I think governments had a number of issues to deal with that may seem bigger than cybercrime, and yes they are, but the problem is indeed growing. We have seen a number of initiatives within government, within state security and within the law enforcement, more specifically the Hawks, around training and around more strategic initiatives to actually deal with cybercrime. But still so much more needs to be done.
We're going to have to leave it there. Craig Rosewarne, MD of Wolfpack Information Risk, thanks very much indeed for coming.
Thank you.
Well, Imperial Air Cargo has urged the Competition Commission to investigate anti-competitive behavior in the air freight market. Imperial says the industry is in a state of escalating crisis. It says non-commercial structures are preventing and distorting competition. Imperial Logistics gave outlined details of what he called non-competitive conduct by state-funded SAA Cargo, which is the dominant player in this market. While Japan's trade deficit widens unexpectedly in August, we'll give you more details on that after the break. Do stay with us.